The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the downtown Chicago office building as Claire Bennett gathered the contents of her desk into a cardboard box. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the framed photo of her son on top 7-year-old Noah, grinning gap-toothed at the camera. Her blonde hair fell forward, hiding the tears she was trying desperately not to shed. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, tiny crystalline messengers of a cold front moving in. Only an hour earlier, Mr. Henderson had stood over her desk, his expression as cold as the weather outside. "I'm sorry it came to this, Claire, but company policy is clear. This is a professional environment, not a daycare. Bringing your child to work even once is grounds for termination." She'd tried to explain. The school had called with an emergency. Noah had a fever of 102. The nurse said he needed to be picked up immediately. Claire's babysitter was out of town visiting her sister. She had no family in the city, no backup plan, so she'd brought Noah to the office, settled him quietly in the corner with his tablet and headphones, thinking she could finish the quarterly reports and leave early. But Henderson had seen him, and that was that. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on Claire's shoulders like a physical burden. At 28, she was now unemployed with rent due in 2 weeks and a son who depended on her for everything. 3 years at Westbrook Consulting, consistently exceeding targets, working weekends when needed, all erased by a single decision made in desperation. "Mom, are we going home now?" Noah asked, his small hand slipping into hers as they walked toward the elevator. The bandage on his forehead from yesterday's playground fall was coming loose at the edges. His cheeks were flushed with fever, brown eyes glassy. Claire stopped kneeling down to look into her son's worried face. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going home." "Did I get you in trouble?" His lower lip quivered. "No, baby, never. You could never get me in trouble." She smoothed his dark hair back from his forehead. "Sometimes grown-up things are just complicated. That's all." They walked out into the swirling snow. The city bustled around them with the energy of people heading home from work. People who still had jobs to return to tomorrow. Claire held Noah's hand tighter and tried to figure out what came next. Their apartment was a small one-bedroom on the north side of the city. Claire had converted the dining nook into Noah's bedroom with colorful curtains and a loft bed that gave him a play space underneath. It wasn't much, but they'd made it home after David left. He'd decided fatherhood wasn't for him when Noah was barely 2, moved to California with a woman from his office, and now sent sporadic child support checks that never quite arrived when the bills did. That night, after giving Noah medicine for his fever and tucking him into bed, Claire sat at their tiny kitchen table with her laptop open, a spreadsheet of their finances glowing starkly in the dim light. Their savings wouldn't cover more than a month of expenses. Her hands hovered over the keyboard, then fell limply to the table. Tomorrow, she would figure it out tomorrow. But tomorrow turned into 3 weeks of relentless job hunting. 47 applications submitted, 12 interviews, 11 rejections. Each morning, Claire would wake before Noah, apply her makeup carefully to hide the dark circles under her eyes, and prepare a cheerful breakfast. "Today's going to be a good day," she'd say, pouring milk over his cereal, packing his lunch with a little note drawn with a smiley face. She'd drop him at school, then change into her interview clothes in the car, the same navy blue suit she'd worn for all 12 interviews, carefully steamed each night to remove the wrinkles. "So you're a single mother," the HR director at Fulton Industries had said, glancing down at her resume. "That must be challenging." "I have excellent childcare arrangements." Claire had answered, the lie bitter on her tongue. She'd had to cut Noah's after-school program to save money. "And what would you do in emergency situations if your child was ill, for instance?" The irony wasn't lost on her. "I have backup plans in place," she'd said, knowing it wasn't true. The rejection email had come before she even reached her car. At Bradley and Myers, the interviewer had been more direct. "We often work late here. Projects can require weekend hours. Would that be a problem for you?" "Not at all," Claire had said, smiling through gritted teeth, wondering how she would afford the extra babysitting hours if she could ask the neighbor's teenage daughter to watch Noah more often. Each rejection email contained the same polite phrases: "Other candidates whose qualifications better match our needs," or "impressed with your experience, but decided to go in a different direction." Claire knew what they really meant. "We found someone without a child, someone who won't need sick days when a little boy catches the flu, someone who won't have to leave early for parent-teacher conferences. Their apartment grew colder as she turned down the thermostat to save on heating bills. Dinner became bowls of instant ramen with frozen vegetables stirred in, though she always made sure Noah had fruit with his lunch. The landlord called twice about the rent being 5 days late. Just this once, he'd said, his voice gruff but not unkind. Don't make a habit of it. On the 23rd day of unemployment, with their savings nearly depleted, Claire sat in the waiting room of Bennett and Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm she'd never heard of before, seeing their job posting online. The office occupied the top 2 floors of a renovated building in the financial district, all gleaming wood and glass with views of the river. It looked expensive, exclusive. Claire felt out of place in her now familiar navy suit, the fabric starting to show wear at the cuffs. The receptionist, a young woman with a friendly smile, called her name. "Mr. Morrison will see you now. Follow me, please." Claire smoothed down her blouse, picked up her worn leather portfolio containing her resume and references, and followed the woman down a corridor lined with black and white photographs of Chicago landmarks. The door at the end opened into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 sides. The snowfall had intensified since morning, blanketing the city in white, softening its hard edges. The man behind the desk stood as she entered. He was perhaps in his late 30s, with dark hair touched with silver at the temples, and an easy presence that immediately put her at ease, despite her nerves. He wore a tailored navy blue suit that spoke of success without ostentation, but it was his smile, warm and genuine, that Claire noticed most. "Claire Bennett, I'm Daniel Morrison. Please have a seat." His voice was deep with a slight roughness at the edges, as though he didn't use it often enough. They settled into chairs across from each other, and Daniel glanced at her resume. Claire took the opportunity to observe his office. Unlike Henderson's sterile workspace with its awards and diplomas prominently displayed, Daniel's office had a lived-in quality. A weathered leather couch sat against one wall, bookshelves filled with volumes that looked actually read rather than displayed. On his desk beside a sleek computer monitor stood a framed photo of an older woman with kind eyes. What caught Claire's attention most, however, was a corner of the office that seemed set aside for a child, a small bookshelf filled with colorful titles, a basket of toys half hidden under a side table, crayons and paper neatly arranged on a child-sized desk. "I see you were with Westbrook Consulting for 3 years, Daniel said, pulling her attention back. "Strong performance reviews, excellent project completion rates." He looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers directly. "Why did you leave?" Claire had prepared for this question, had rehearsed various diplomatic answers in her car before the interview. "I was seeking new opportunities for growth," or "I was ready for a new challenge." But something in Daniel's eyes, a kindness maybe, or just her own exhaustion with corporate pretense, made her decide on honesty. "I was fired for bringing my son to work," she said, the words coming out in a rush. "He was sick. The school called, and I had no other option. I thought I could manage both, but—" She paused, swallowing hard. "My former boss felt it violated company policy." Daniel was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful rather than judgmental. Then he did something unexpected. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an old photograph, sliding it across the desk to Claire. The photo showed a young boy, maybe 8 or 9, sitting in the corner of an office. He had a bandage on his head and was reading a book, clearly trying to make himself small and invisible. The image was slightly faded, clearly from another era, but the child's discomfort was timeless and immediately recognizable. "That's me," Daniel said softly. 29 years ago, my mother was a single parent working as a secretary at a law firm. I got hurt at school, fell off the monkey bars, needed stitches. She had no one to watch me, so she brought me to work." He smiled at the memory, but there was something sad in his eyes. "I tried so hard to be quiet, to not be a problem. I remember thinking that if I was good enough, invisible enough, maybe they wouldn't notice me." Claire felt her throat tighten, seeing Noah in that little boy's determined stillness. "Her boss found me," Daniel continued, leaning back in his chair, "and instead of firing her, he sat down and talked to me, asked about my favorite subjects in school, what I wanted to be when I grew up. Then he told my mother to take the rest of the day off, paid to take care of me." Daniel's voice grew softer. He said, "A company that doesn't understand that parents are people with real responsibilities isn't a company worth working for." Daniel leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "That man taught me something that day. though I didn't understand it until years later. He taught me that how we treat people in their most vulnerable moments defines who we are. Not our policies, not our procedures, but our humanity. Claire felt tears sliding down her cheeks before she could stop them. She wiped them away quickly, embarrassed by the display of emotion in a job interview of all places. I tried so hard to do everything right, she whispered, the words escaping before she could contain them. I know you did. I can see it in your resume and your references. You're exactly the kind of person this company needs. Someone who shows up, who takes responsibility, who does whatever it takes. He paused, his gaze steady on hers. And someone who understands that being a good parent doesn't make you a bad employee. It makes you someone who knows how to juggle priorities, solve problems, and work under pressure. Are you offering me the job? Claire asked, hardly daring to believe it. I am. Same salary as Westbrook, better benefits. Daniel picked up the photograph and returned it to his drawer. And Claire, we have a different kind of policy here. If your son is sick and you need to bring him in, you do it. We have a quiet room with a couch, some books, a few toys. It's not fancy, but it works. His smile deepened, revealing a dimple in his left cheek. Because I remember what it felt like to be that kid trying to be invisible. And I remember what it meant to my mother to work for someone who saw her as a whole person, not just an employee. The job offer was more than Claire had hoped for, but it was Daniel's next words that truly changed everything. There's one more thing, he said, standing and walking to the window, looking out at the snow-covered city. I started this company 10 years ago after working my way up from nothing. My mother cleaned offices at night while studying for her degree during the day, bringing me along when she had to. He traced a pattern in the condensation on the glass. She taught me that dignity isn't about what job you have or how much money you make. It's about how you treat people when they need help. He turned back to Claire, his expression somber. She passed away 5 years ago. Cancer. In the end, she told me that her greatest accomplishment wasn't her career, though she eventually became a successful attorney. It was raising a son who understood kindness. His voice caught slightly on the last word, and so I built this company on that principle. We succeed together or not at all. Claire started the following Monday. For the first time in weeks, she slept through the night without waking in a cold sweat, worrying about bills or their future. The relief was almost dizzying. The Bennett and Associates offices occupied the 16th and 17th floors of the Riverside Tower. Unlike the sterile identical cubicles at Westbrook, each workspace here was personalized windows, letting in natural light, plants thriving on desktops and windowsills. Claire's desk faced east, catching the morning sun. Janet Daniels, executive assistant, a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked dark hair and an efficient manner, showed Claire around. The quiet room is down this hall, she said, opening a door to reveal a comfortable space with a sofa, bookshelves, and a small desk. Daniel had it set up when he started the company. We've all used it at some point for sick kids, elderly, parents, even a pet once when the sitter canceled. Claire ran her fingers over the spines of children's books arranged on a low shelf. Does he have children? She asked, thinking of the toys she'd noticed in his office. A shadow passed over Janet's face. A daughter, Lily. She's 9 now. She's at boarding school upstate. Before Claire could ask more, they were joined by Marcus Elliott, the company's chief financial officer. Where Daniel was warm and approachable, Marcus was all sharp edges and precise movements, his handshake firm to the point of discomfort, his smile not reaching his eyes. Bennett and Associates has a reputation for excellence, he said, looking Claire up and down as though assessing her market value. We expect nothing less from every member of the team. Janet rolled her eyes behind his back, giving Claire a subtle wink as she led her away. Don't mind Marcus. He's all bark, very little bite. He and Daniel have been friends since business school, but they couldn't be more different. Claire's first 2 weeks passed in a blur of new project systems to learn names to remember. She'd arrive early, dropping Noah at school before most teachers had even arrived, and work efficiently through the day. Daniel was often out of the office meeting with clients, but when their paths crossed, he always took a moment to ask how she was settling in, if she needed anything. Then came the Tuesday when Noah woke with a cough that rattled in his small chest, his forehead hot to the touch. The school nurse called just before 9. He's running a fever of 101, she explained. He needs to go home. Claire felt the familiar panic rise in her chest. Her new babysitter couldn't come until afternoon. She had no family to call, and she had a client presentation at 11 that she'd been preparing for all week. With trembling hands, she dialed Janet's extension. "I need to speak with Daniel," she said, her voice tight with anxiety. It's about the quiet room." 20 minutes later, Claire was setting Noah up on the sofa in the quiet room, tucking a blanket around him, placing a cup of water and his medicine within reach. "You'll be right next door," he asked, his voice raspy from coughing. "Right next door," she promised. "And you have my cell number if you need anything. Just rest, watch your shows, and I'll check on you between meetings." As she turned to leave, she found Daniel standing in the doorway watching them with an unreadable expression. "I'm sorry," Claire said quickly. "The school called. He has a fever and I have the Meridian presentation in an hour. I can reschedule if you—" Daniel held up a hand, stopping her apology. "You don't need to explain." He stepped into the room, crouching down beside the sofa to be at eye level with Noah. "Hey there, I'm Daniel. Your mom works with me." Noah regarded him solemnly. "I'm Noah. I'm 7. 7's a good age. I remember being 7. What grade are you in, Noah?" "Second, Mrs. Abernathy's class. I got star student last week." "Star student. That's impressive. What did you do to earn that?" As Noah launched into an explanation of the classroom reward system, Claire watched the easy rapport developing between them. Daniel listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was truly engaged. "I should probably let you rest," Daniel said after a few minutes. "That cough sounds pretty rough." Noah nodded, then looked at Daniel with a directness that only children can manage. "Are you my mom's boss?" "I suppose I am, technically." "My mom's last boss was mean. He didn't like kids." Daniel's eyes flickered to Claire, then back to Noah. "Well, I happen to think kids are pretty great, especially ones who earn star student." He stood ruffling Noah's hair gently. "Get some rest, buddy. Your mom has an important presentation to give, but she'll check on you soon." In the hallway outside, Claire began to thank him, but Daniel shook his head. "You don't need to thank me for basic human decency, Claire." He glanced back at the door. "He seems like a great kid." "He is," Claire said, feeling the fierce pride that only a parent can know. "He's the best thing in my life." Daniel's expression shifted, something like sorrow passing briefly across his features before his professional mask returned. "The Meridian presentation. Do you have everything you need?" "Yes, I'm ready." Claire straightened her shoulders. "I won't let you down." "I know you won't," he said simply and walked away. The Meridian presentation went flawlessly. Claire had prepared, thoroughly anticipating questions, handling objections with confidence born of experience. When the clients left, Daniel caught her eye across the conference room and gave her a subtle thumbs up. The contract was as good as signed. Throughout the day, Claire checked on Noah between meetings. By afternoon, his fever had broken, and she found him sitting up drawing pictures with crayons he'd found in a desk drawer. "Look, Mom," he said, holding up his artwork. "It's your new office, and that's Mr. Daniel. He came to check on me twice. He brought me apple juice and crackers." Claire looked at the crayon drawing, surprised. Daniel had visited her son without mentioning it. The stick figure representing him was drawn in blue, disproportionately tall, compared to the smaller red figure that was clearly Noah. Both had enormous smiles. "He told me about his little girl." Noah continued, selecting a purple crayon for his next masterpiece. "She goes to a special school far away. He misses her a lot." Claire sat beside her son, running a hand through his dark hair, still damp from fever sweat. "Did he say anything else?" Noah shrugged. "He asked about my dad. I told him Dad lives in California with Stacy and they have a pool." Claire winced. David's absence was a wound that never quite healed, especially seeing it through Noah's eyes. The casual way he accepted his father's new life, the family that didn't include him. "Mr. Daniel said sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," Noah added, concentrating on his drawing. "But the biggest mistake is not knowing what's really important." That evening, after taking Noah home and settling him into bed with another dose of medicine, Claire sat at her kitchen table sipping tea and thinking about Daniel Morrison. There was a depth to him she hadn't expected, layers beneath a successful CEO exterior. The photograph of himself as a child, the quiet room he'd created, the way he spoke to Noah, not with condescension, but with genuine respect. And beneath it all, a sadness she couldn't quite define. The next morning, Noah's fever was gone, though the cough lingered. Claire decided to send him back to school, knowing the nurse would call if he worsened. When she arrived at the office, she found a small package on her desk wrapped in simple brown paper. Inside was a new box of crayons, the deluxe kind with 64 colors in a built-in sharpener, and a note written in a strong angular hand. For our resident artist, hope he's feeling better. DM. The gesture was small but touched Claire deeply. In 3 years at Westbrook, her former boss had never once asked about Noah, had treated the very fact of his existence as an inconvenience. Daniel, in contrast, had remembered a passing detail from a brief conversation and acted on it with thoughtfulness. Over the next few weeks, Claire settled into her role at Bennett and Associates. The work was challenging, but satisfying, the atmosphere notably different from Westbrook. People collaborated rather than competed. Lunch hours were actually taken, not worked through. When a project ran late, dinner was ordered for the team. Small things perhaps, but they created an environment where people thrived rather than merely survived. Daniel remained something of an enigma. Professional and warm during meetings, he nevertheless maintained a certain distance. Claire would sometimes catch him watching team interactions with a wistful expression, as though observing something he admired but couldn't quite participate in. He worked longer hours than anyone his office light, often the last one burning when everyone else had gone home. Claire learned more about him in fragments, pieces of information gathered from conversations with coworkers. Daniel had started the company after leaving a prestigious firm where he'd been the youngest partner in their history. He'd walked away at the height of success to found Bennett and Associates, named for his mother's maiden name. His wife had died 3 years ago, a car accident on an icy road taking a curve too fast. Lily, their daughter, had been in the car but survived with only minor injuries. He was different before, Janet told Claire one afternoon as they waited for coffee in the break room. More present, I suppose you could say. The work was important, but it wasn't everything. And now, Janet sighed, stirring creamer into her coffee. And now it's like he's trying to outrun something. Maybe guilt, maybe grief, probably both. Claire thought of the quiet room of Daniel's insistence that employees be treated as whole people with lives and responsibilities outside work. It seemed at odds with a man who sent his own daughter to boarding school who worked 16-hour days. The mystery of Daniel Morrison deepened one Saturday in late November when Claire took Noah to Lincoln Park. The day was cold but clear, the last of autumn's leaves clinging stubbornly to a few trees. Noah raced ahead to the playground, while Claire followed more slowly, enjoying the rare leisure of a weekend morning with nothing pressing to do. She found a bench with a good view of the play structure where Noah was already scaling the climbing wall. Pulling her coat tighter against the chill, she settled in, content to watch her son play. It was only after a few minutes that she noticed the man and girl on the next bench over. Daniel sat with a child who could only be his daughter. Lily had her father's dark hair and serious expression, though her features were finer, more delicate. They sat in silence, neither looking at the other, the space between them on the bench, a physical manifestation of emotional distance. Claire was about to look away, not wanting to intrude on what was clearly a private moment, when Noah spotted them. "Mr. Daniel," he called, waving enthusiastically from the top of the slide. He came down with a whoop of joy and ran across the playground. "Hi, Mr. Daniel, Mom. Look who's here." Too late to pretend she hadn't seen them, Claire rose and walked over, offering an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry to interrupt your Saturday." Daniel stood seemingly surprised but not displeased. "Claire, hello." He glanced at Noah, who was bouncing on his toes, still flushed with the exhilaration of play. "I see someone's feeling better." "Much better," Claire confirmed. "The crayons were a hit, by the way." "Thank you." Daniel nodded, then turned to the girl beside him. "Lily, this is Claire Bennett. She works with me, and this is Noah." Lily regarded them both with solemn eyes. "Hello," she said, her voice quiet but clear. "Are you Mr. Daniel's daughter?" Noah asked, direct as always. "He told me about you. You go to a special school far away." Lily nodded, a flicker of interest crossing her face. "It's not that special," she said. "It's just boarding school." "What's boarding school?" "It's where you live at school, away from home." Noah's eyes widened. "You live at school all the time, even at night?" "Not all the time. I come home on some weekends." Lily looked up at her father, something unreadable passing between them. "And holidays." Daniel checked his watch, a gesture Claire recognized as nervousness rather than impatience. "We should probably be going. We have lunch reservations." Can Lily play first? Noah asked, looking from Daniel to Lily with hopeful eyes. I was just about to go on the monkey bars. I can show her the trick I learned. Lily looked up at her father, a silent plea in her eyes that Claire recognized instantly. It was the look Noah got when he wanted something but was afraid to ask directly. I suppose we have a little time, Daniel said after a moment. If it's all right with Ms. Bennett. Of course, Claire said. And please, it's just Claire. As the children ran off toward the playground, Claire and Daniel sat on the bench, an awkward silence settling between them. She seems lovely, Claire said finally. Your daughter. Daniel watched Lily climb the ladder to the monkey bars, Noah following close behind. She is, though I'm not sure she'd agree with that assessment at the moment. 9 is a complicated age. So I'm discovering. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I'm not very good at this. At what? Being a father, at least not on my own. The admission seemed to cost him something. Megan, my wife, she was the one who knew how to talk to Lily, how to do all the little things that made her feel secure. I was just the dad who came home for bedtime stories and weekend outings. Claire watched Noah demonstrate his monkey bar technique, Lily observing with serious concentration before attempting it herself. You're being too hard on yourself. Am I? Daniel's voice had an edge of bitterness. I sent her to boarding school because I couldn't handle raising her alone. What kind of father does that? One who's doing his best with an impossible situation, Claire said quietly. There's no manual for this, Daniel. No perfect way to handle loss. He looked at her, then really looked at her as though seeing beyond the professional exterior to the woman who had also navigated single parenthood, though under different circumstances. How do you do it? Make it look so easy. Claire laughed softly. Trust me, it's not easy, and I don't always get it right. There are days I'm sure I'm scarring him for life when I lose my patience or miss a school event because of work. She watched Noah help Lily when she slipped, steadying her until she found her grip again. But children are remarkably resilient. They don't need perfect parents. They just need present ones. Daniel fell silent, contemplating her words. On the playground, Lily had mastered the trick and was showing Noah something new, their initial awkwardness forgotten in the universal language of play. She's at West Hill Academy, Daniel said after a while. It's one of the best schools in the state, the kind of education that opens doors. Claire heard the justification in his voice, the need to explain his choice. I'm sure it is. She has friends there, a routine. That's important. Daniel sighed, his breath visible in the cold air. She hates it. Won't say so directly, but I can tell. Every Sunday when I drive her back, she gets quieter and quieter. By the time we reach the gates, she's practically mute. Claire felt a pang of sympathy for both father and daughter, each trying to navigate grief in their own way, neither quite able to reach the other. Have you asked her if she wants to come home? I'm afraid to, he admitted, the words barely audible. What if she says yes? My schedule, the company. I don't know how I'd manage. The same way the rest of us do, Claire said gently. One day at a time with help when we need it. Daniel looked at her, a complex mix of emotions crossing his face, vulnerability, gratitude, and something else she couldn't quite name. Before he could respond, the children returned, cheeks flushed from exertion and cold. Dad, can Noah and Ms. Bennett come to lunch with us? Lily asked, her earlier reserve melted away by play. Noah's never had sushi. Daniel looked surprised, then glanced at Claire. I don't want to impose on your Saturday plans. We didn't really have plans, Claire admitted. Just the park and maybe the library later. Please, Mom, Noah chimed in. Lily says they have ice cream that looks like other food. Ice cream that looks like spaghetti. Claire laughed at his enthusiasm. Well, when you put it that way, how can I refuse? Lunch was at a small Japanese restaurant in Lincoln Park, the kind of place that didn't advertise and required reservations weeks in advance. The hostess greeted Daniel by name, leading them to a private room with a low table and cushions on the floor. This is awesome, Noah whispered to Claire as they removed their shoes. It's like we're eating in Japan. The meal that followed was unlike any Claire had experienced since before Noah was born. Daniel ordered for the table a parade of small, exquisite dishes that delighted the children. Noah tried everything, even the raw fish with the adventurous spirit only a 7-year-old can muster. Lily, watching his enthusiasm, seemed to shed years of practiced poise, giggling when he made faces at the wasabi. Claire watched Daniel throughout the meal, seeing him in a new light. With Lily, he was careful, attentive, clearly trying to bridge a gap neither knew quite how to cross. But with Noah, he was relaxed, playful, even helping him master chopsticks with patient instruction, telling silly jokes that made both children laugh. It was a side of him she hadn't seen at the office. This man who could fold an origami crane from a napkin, who knew exactly how to order ice cream that looked remarkably like spaghetti and meatballs, who carried a quiet sorrow but could still find joy in a child's delight. As they left the restaurant, Lily tugged on Daniel's sleeve. "Can we go to the bookstore, the one with the big children's section?" Daniel checked his watch, a habitual gesture Claire now realized rather than a sign of impatience. "We have time before you need to be back at school." "Can Noah and Ms. Bennett come too?" Lily asked, looking at Claire with hopeful eyes. Claire glanced at Daniel, not wanting to intrude further on their limited time together. But he smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "We'd like that, wouldn't we, Lily?" The afternoon stretched on one unexpected pleasure after another. The bookstore visit became a trip to the Art Institute, where Daniel surprised Claire by knowing the names of all the artists in the Impressionist gallery, telling the children stories about Monet's water lilies and Degas' ballet dancers that made the paintings come alive. By the time they parted ways in the museum parking lot, the awkwardness of their chance meeting had transformed into something else, not quite friendship, but the possibility of it. Lily hugged Noah goodbye, extracting a promise to show her more playground tricks next time she was home. Claire watched as Daniel helped his daughter into the car, noting how she leaned into him briefly, a small gesture of affection that seemed to catch him by surprise. "Thank you for today," he said to Claire, his voice low. "It's the most I've heard her laugh in, well, a long time." "We enjoyed it too," Claire said truthfully. "Noah will talk about that ice cream for weeks." Daniel smiled, but his eyes were serious. "What you said earlier about being present rather than perfect, I've been thinking about that." "It was just an observation, not advice," Claire said, quickly aware of the delicate line between colleague and friend they were navigating. "Nevertheless, it was something I needed to hear." He glanced at his daughter waiting in the car. "I've made a lot of decisions based on what I thought was best for Lily. I'm beginning to wonder if I should have asked her what she thought was best." As Claire drove home with a tired but happy Noah chattering in the back seat, she found herself thinking about Daniel Morrison in a new way. Not as her boss, not as the successful CEO, but as a man struggling with grief and single parenthood, making mistakes and trying to find his way back to what mattered most. Monday morning brought a return to professional routine. Claire arrived early, determined to finish the Meridian contract before the client meeting at 11. She was surprised to find Daniel already in the office, his door open, looking as though he'd been there for hours. He greeted her with a nod as she passed his office, nothing in his manner suggesting they'd spent Saturday afternoon together. Claire felt a twinge of disappointment, but reminded herself of professional boundaries. Daniel was her boss, not her friend, despite the unexpected connection they'd shared. The week proceeded normally until Thursday morning, when Claire arrived to find Janet in an unusual state of agitation. "He's canceled all his meetings for the next 2 days," she said, hovering near Claire's desk with a stack of rescheduling notes. "Just called this morning and said he wouldn't be in." No explanation. "Is he ill?" Claire asked, concerned despite herself. Janet shook her head. "Daniel doesn't get sick. In 10 years, I've never known him to take a sick day. Something's going on." Claire thought of Lily of the boarding school that made her quiet and withdrawn. "Could it be a family matter?" Janet's expression softened. "Possibly, though he usually tells me if it's about Lily." She sighed, straightening her stack of notes. "Whatever it is, we'll manage. Marcus will cover the Meridian signing. You'll still present the implementation timeline." The day passed in a flurry of activity, everyone stepping up to cover Daniel's responsibilities. Claire found herself distracted, wondering what could have pulled him away so suddenly. By evening, with the Meridian contract successfully signed and the implementation schedule approved, her concern had deepened. On impulse, she stopped by a small bakery near her apartment on the way home, picking up a box of pastries. The next morning, she arrived at the office early, leaving the box on Daniel's desk with a simple note. "Whatever it is, we've got things covered here. Take the time you need. CB." She didn't expect a response and was surprised when her cell phone buzzed with a text message around noon. "Thank you for the pastries. Lily loved the chocolate croissants. I've pulled her out of West Hill." Your words about present versus perfect kept echoing. We're figuring out next steps. See you Monday. DM. Claire stared at the message, rereading it twice to be sure she'd understood. Daniel had removed Lily from boarding school because of something she'd said. The thought was both flattering and terrifying. What if she'd given him bad advice? What if it didn't work out? But beneath these concerns was a deeper feeling, a recognition that Daniel had trusted her opinion enough to make a life-changing decision. Not as his employee, but as a fellow parent navigating difficult waters. Monday morning arrived with a buzz of anticipation among the staff. Daniel returned looking simultaneously exhausted and energized, as though he'd been through some internal battle and emerged changed by it. Morrison actually smiled at me this morning, Marcus commented to Claire as they waited for the elevator. Not his client smile, a real one. What the hell happened during his days off? Claire just shrugged, unwilling to share what little she knew. Maybe he just needed a break. The weekly staff meeting that afternoon brought answers. Daniel stood at the head of the conference table looking more relaxed than Claire had ever seen him, despite the dark circles under his eyes suggesting sleepless nights. Before we get to business, I have a personal announcement. He began, his voice steady. As some of you know, my daughter Lily has been attending boarding school for the past 2 years. As of last Friday, she's no longer a student there. She'll be living at home with me and attending Lakeside Elementary starting next week. A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. Janet beamed from her seat near Daniel while Marcus frowned slightly, no doubt calculating the impact on Daniel's work schedule. This will necessitate some changes in how I structure my time, Daniel continued. I'll be leaving the office by 5 most days to be home for dinner. I'll still be available by phone or email for urgent matters, but otherwise evenings are family time. His gaze swept the room, landing briefly on Claire before moving on. I believe in work-life balance for all of you. It's time I practiced what I preach. The meeting proceeded to business matters, but Claire found it hard to concentrate. She kept thinking of the text message of Daniel's words about her influence on his decision. It felt like a responsibility she hadn't asked for yet couldn't deny. After the meeting disbanded, Daniel asked her to stay behind. When the room had emptied, he closed the door and sat across from her, his expression serious but open. I owe you an explanation, he began. Your words on Saturday struck a chord, about being present rather than perfect. I couldn't stop thinking about them, about how I've been trying to give Lily the perfect education, the perfect opportunities while missing the one thing she actually needed me. Claire's chest tightened at the raw honesty in his voice. Daniel, I didn't mean to interfere. My situation is different from yours. But the principle is the same, he interrupted gently. I've been hiding behind work, behind West Hill's reputation, because being present meant facing grief and guilt I wasn't ready to handle. He paused, collecting himself. When Megan died, I was supposed to be driving. We were coming back from a weekend trip, but I had a conference call I couldn't miss. She took the wheel so I could be on the phone. The roads were icy. The weight of his unspoken guilt hung heavy in the air between them. Claire wanted to reach across the table to offer some comfort, but maintained her professional distance. That wasn't your fault, Daniel. Logically, I know that. Emotionally? He shook his head. Lily was in the back seat. She saw everything. Afterward, she wouldn't talk about it, and I didn't know how to help her. So I sent her away to people I thought could do better than I could. His voice broke slightly. I abandoned her when she needed me most. You did what you thought was best at the time, Claire said softly. That's all any of us can do. Daniel's eyes met hers, vulnerability and determination mingling in their dark depths. I'm bringing her home. It won't be easy. She's angry, hurt. We have years of distance to overcome, but we're going to try. She's lucky to have a father willing to try, Claire said. Many wouldn't. The conversation shifted then to practical matters, adjustments to Daniel's schedule projects that might need reassignment contingency plans for when Lily was ill or had school events. Through it all, Claire was struck by his commitment, his willingness to restructure a company he'd built from the ground up to accommodate his daughter's needs. As she left his office, Claire felt a strange mix of emotions, admiration for Daniel's courage in changing course, concern for the challenges ahead for him and Lily, and beneath it all, a growing personal attachment she wasn't quite ready to examine. That evening, as she helped Noah with his homework at their kitchen table, Claire found herself thinking about second chances. Not just for Daniel and Lily, but perhaps for herself as well. After David left, she'd thrown herself into being the perfect mother, the perfect employee, leaving little room for anything else. Maybe it was time to follow her own advice about presence over perfection. Noah looked up from his math worksheet, his pencil tapping against the table. Mom, are Mr. Daniel and Lily our friends now? Claire considered the question with all its innocent complexity. I think they could be. Would you like that? Noah nodded, his expression serious. Lily needs a friend. She's sad inside like Mr. Daniel, but not as much when she's playing. Out of the mouths of babes, Claire thought, struck once again by her son's perceptiveness. How did you get so wise, huh? Noah grinned, his gap-toothed smile pure sunshine. I learned it from you, Mom. You're the wisest person ever. Claire ruffled his hair, her heart full. I don't know about that, buddy, but I'm learning. Every day, I'm learning. Outside their window, snow began to fall again, delicate flakes swirling in the glow of streetlights. Claire watched them, remembering that day 3 weeks ago when she'd walked out of Westbrook Consulting into similar weather fear clutching at her heart. Now, as the snow transformed the city into a winter wonderland, she felt something she hadn't expected to feel again so soon, hope fragile but persistent, like the first green shoots after a long winter. In his office across town, Daniel Morrison stood at his own window, watching the same snowfall, his thoughts traveling similar paths. On his desk lay the old photograph of himself as a child in his mother's workplace, alongside a newer one of Lily taken that weekend, her smile tentative but real, the first genuine one he'd seen in years. Between them sat a box of pastries, one chocolate croissant, remaining a reminder of unexpected kindness and words that had changed everything. Being present matters more than being perfect. The snow continued to fall, connecting their separate worlds in a blanket of white, promising that after even the coldest seasons, renewal remains possible. All it takes is one person willing to remember, willing to say, I understand, let me help. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. The Monday after Lily's first week at Lakeside Elementary brought a new energy to Bennett and Associates. Daniel arrived at 9 instead of his usual 7, having dropped his daughter off at school himself. His tie was slightly crooked, his hair less perfectly combed, but his smile carried a lightness Claire hadn't seen before. He stopped by her desk, coffee in hand, the dark circles under his eyes contradicting his upbeat demeanor. Survived the first week, he murmured, leaning against the edge of her cubicle. Barely. Did you know fourth graders need to make dioramas of the Illinois ecosystem at 10 o'clock at night? Claire laughed, remembering her own late-night school project emergencies. Let me guess, no supplies in the house. Not a pipe cleaner or cotton ball to be found. We ended up using pasta for trees and my shaving cream for snow. He shook his head, taking a long sip of coffee. I haven't been this sleep-deprived since she was a baby. Welcome to real parenthood, the land where bedtimes are suggestions and craft supplies are currency. Daniel's expression softened, gratitude evident in his tired eyes. Thank you, by the way, for the list of after-school programs and that contact at the Parents Network. They've been incredibly helpful. Before Claire could respond, Marcus appeared, tablet in hand, expression pinched. Daniel, we need to discuss the quarterly projections. The Meridian implementation is running behind schedule, and the board is asking questions. The moment of casual connection shattered. Daniel straightened, professional mask sliding back into place. Of course. Let's use the small conference room. He nodded to Claire, a silent acknowledgement of their interrupted conversation, and followed Marcus down the hallway. The exchange set the tone for the coming weeks. Daniel was navigating uncharted waters, being fully present for Lily, while maintaining his leadership of the company. Some days he managed the balance beautifully. Others, the strain showed in forgotten meetings or missed deadlines. Claire watched him struggle, admiring his determination, even as she recognized the toll it was taking. January arrived with bitter cold and a fresh set of challenges. Noah caught the flu that was sweeping through his school, forcing Claire to bring him to the office for 3 consecutive days. The quiet room became their temporary sanctuary. Noah bundled on the sofa with his tablet in medicine, Claire working at the small desk in the corner, darting between meetings and checkups on her son. On the 3rd day, Lily appeared in the doorway after school, her backpack still on, curiosity written across her face. Dad said Noah was sick, she said, hovering uncertainly in the threshold. Can I come in? I had the flu last month, so I can't catch it again. Noah perked up in the sight of his friend, whom he hadn't seen since their museum day. Lily, come see my new game. You get to build entire cities, and then monsters attack them. Claire watched as Lily settled beside Noah, her initial hesitation melting away as he demonstrated the game. There was something poignant about their easy friendship, the way children could connect without the complications adults brought to relationships. Daniel appeared a few minutes later, his expression a mix of apology and relief when he saw the children engaged in conversation. "I hope this is okay," he said quietly to Claire. She insisted on seeing how Noah was feeling, and I thought, "It's fine," Claire assured him, gathering her laptop and files. "He's been bored out of his mind. The company is nice." Daniel lingered watching the children with that same wistful expression she'd noticed before. "She talks about him, you know, asks when we might see you both again." He hesitated, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. "I know it's not conventional mixing work and personal lives, but perhaps once Noah is feeling better." "Dad," Lily called, interrupting his thought. "Can Noah come over to our house sometime? He's never seen my rock collection." Daniel glanced at Claire, eyebrows raised in question. Claire found herself nodding before she'd fully considered the implications. "That would be nice when he's recovered." The invitation led to a Saturday playdate 2 weeks later. Claire drove to the address Daniel had provided Noah, buzzing with excitement in the back seat. They turned onto a tree-lined street in Lincoln Park, elegant brownstones standing shoulder to shoulder like sentinels of old money and established success. Daniel's home was a surprise, not the modern penthouse Claire had imagined, but a restored Victorian with a small front yard and wraparound porch. It was grand without being ostentatious homey, despite its evident value. Lily burst through the front door before they'd fully exited the car, rushing down the steps to greet them. "Come see my room," she urged Noah, barely waiting for him to unbuckle his seatbelt. "I have the whole third floor." The children disappeared inside, leaving Claire and Daniel standing in the crisp January air. Snow crunched beneath their boots as he led her up the walkway, their breath forming small clouds in the frigid temperature. "It was Megan's family home," he explained, answering Claire's unspoken question about the house's unexpected character. "Her parents left it to her when they retired to Arizona. I wanted to sell it after she died. Too many memories." But Lily refused to even discuss it. This house is her connection to her mother. The interior was as surprising as the exterior warm lived in, with an elegant disorder that spoke of actual habitation rather than curated presentation. Books spilled from shelves. A half-finished puzzle dominated the dining table. Winter boots and coats lay scattered in the entryway where Lily had evidently dropped them in her excitement. "Please excuse the chaos," Daniel said, gathering the discarded outerwear. "We're still figuring out our routine, and apparently that routine doesn't yet include hanging up coats." Claire smiled, relieved by the evidence of normal family life. "Our apartment looks the same, just with fewer square feet to contain the explosion." Daniel led her through to a spacious kitchen at the back of the house, where sunlight poured through the large windows overlooking a snow-covered garden. "Coffee, or there's tea if you prefer?" "Coffee would be wonderful." Claire settled on a stool at the kitchen island, watching as Daniel moved with practiced ease, grinding beans and preparing an espresso machine that looked professional grade. This was yet another side of him, domestic, comfortable, far removed from the polished CEO who commanded boardrooms. Above them, the ceiling occasionally creaked with the sound of running children, their laughter filtering down through the old house's bones. Daniel glanced up, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Lily hasn't laughed like that in, I can't remember how long." He placed a steaming mug before Claire, the rich aroma of good coffee filling the space between them. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, the winter sun creating patterns on the kitchen floor as it filtered through tree branches outside. "How is she adjusting?" Claire asked finally. "To being home to the new school?" Daniel cradled his own mug, considering the question. "Better than I expected in some ways, worse in others. She loves being home, having her own space back, but she's struggling academically. West Hill was ahead of Lakeside in several subjects. That'll even out. Children are adaptable. So I keep telling myself." He paused, staring into his coffee as though it might contain answers. "The school counselor thinks she should see someone, a therapist, to process everything: the accident, her mother's death, the boarding school." His grip tightened on the mug. "I should have done that 2 years ago. Instead, I shipped her off to West Hill and told myself it was for her education. Claire felt the weight of his regret, so similar to the guilt all parents carry for the mistakes they can't undo. You can't change the past, Daniel, but you're doing the right thing now, and that matters. Does it? He looked up, vulnerability naked in his expression. Sometimes I wonder if I've damaged our relationship beyond repair. She doesn't trust me. She's waiting for me to send her away again. Then prove to her day by day that you won't. Claire leaned forward, the conviction in her voice surprising even herself. Children are more forgiving than we deserve. They want to believe in us. Give her reasons to. Daniel held her gaze, something shifting in his eyes. Gratitude, yes, but something else too. Something that sent a flutter of awareness through Claire's chest. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities, until the thunder of footsteps on the stairs broke the spell. Lily burst into the kitchen, Noah close behind, both flushed with excitement. Dad, can we make the cookies now? The ones Grandma used to make. Daniel blinked, drawing himself back to the present. Of course, Pumpkin. Let's find the recipe. The afternoon unfolded in a blur of cookie-making, board games, and comfortable conversation. Claire watched as Daniel and Lily moved around each other in the kitchen, their interactions still carrying a hint of caution, but warming with each shared task. Noah fit seamlessly into their dynamic, his natural exuberance drawing Lily out of her shell, his questions giving Daniel opportunities to share family stories that made Lily's eyes light with recognition. It was the most normal Claire had felt in years, this simple act of spending time with another family, of watching her son form connections beyond their tight two-person unit. She'd forgotten how it felt to relax in adult company, to laugh freely, to share the universal experiences of parenthood without explanation or apology. As the winter afternoon faded toward evening, Daniel insisted they stay for dinner. Nothing fancy, he assured her. Just pasta, but there's plenty and the kids are having fun. Dinner stretched into dessert, the cookies they'd baked earlier, which stretched into a movie on the enormous television in the living room. The children sprawled on cushions on the floor while Claire and Daniel sat on opposite ends of a deep sofa, comfortable in shared silence. Claire found herself watching Daniel as much as the movie. The way the screen's changing light played across his features, how he smiled at the children's reactions, the gradual relaxation of his shoulders as the evening progressed. This was a different man than the one she'd met 3 months ago, or perhaps the same man finally able to be himself. When the movie ended, Claire reluctantly announced it was time to go. Noah protested sleepily, but gathered his things, exchanging elaborate handshakes with Lily that they'd apparently invented during their time together. Daniel walked them to the door, helping Noah with his coat, while Claire bundled herself against the night's chill. Thank you for today, he said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. For Lily, but also for me. I'd forgotten what it was like to have a normal Saturday. So had I, Claire admitted. Their eyes met in the dim entryway, and that same current passed between them, acknowledgement of something neither was ready to name. We should do it again sometime. I'd like that. His hand brushed hers as he handed her her scarf, the brief contact, sending warmth through her fingers despite the cold. Drive safely. The drive home was quiet, Noah dozing in the back seat, Claire's mind replaying moments from the day Daniel teaching the children how to measure flour. His deep laugh, when Noah told a rambling joke, the way he'd unconsciously reached to brush Lily's hair from her face during the movie. His fingers hesitating midair as though unsure of his welcome, then continuing when Lily leaned into his touch, little moments of healing, of reconnection. And Claire found herself wanting to be part of more of them, a realization that both excited and terrified her. The following week brought a fresh challenge to Bennett and Associates. A major client threatened to pull their business, citing delays in their project timeline. Daniel called an emergency meeting Monday morning, the strain evident in the tightness around his eyes, the return of his perfectly knotted tie and impeccable suit armor against corporate warfare. We can't afford to lose Franklin Industries, he told the assembled team, pacing at the head of the conference table. They represent 15% of our annual revenue. Marcus, what are our options? Marcus slid a spreadsheet across the table. Their primary complaint is the implementation schedule. We're 2 weeks behind on the first deliverable. If we reassign resources from the Peterson project, we might make up the time. Peterson is a new client, Janet pointed out. We promised them priority treatment. And Franklin has been with us for 5 years, Marcus countered. Business is business. We go where the money is. Claire studied the spreadsheet, a solution forming in her mind. What if we don't have to choose? All eyes turned to her. The Peterson implementation is similar enough to Franklin that we could develop a shared framework. Different customizations on top, but the same foundation. We'd save development time on both. Daniel stopped pacing, his expression thoughtful. That could work, but we'd need to restructure both teams, integrate their efforts. It would require someone overseeing both projects, ensuring the shared elements don't drift apart. I could do it, Claire offered, the words leaving her mouth before she'd fully considered the implications. I've worked on both accounts. I understand the requirements. Daniel's eyes met hers across the table, professional assessment mixed with something more personal, concern perhaps. It would mean longer hours, probably some weekends. I can handle it. Claire straightened in her chair, pushing aside thoughts of how this would affect her time with Noah. This was her chance to prove herself, to show she could balance the demands of single parenthood with professional advancement. Let me put together a proposal this afternoon. We can present it to both clients by Wednesday. The meeting adjourned with renewed energy, the team splitting off to tackle their assigned tasks. Claire remained at the table, already sketching out integration points between the two projects when she realized Daniel had stayed behind. Are you sure about this? He asked, closing the conference room door. It's a significant commitment. With Noah, I can make it work. Claire continued writing, avoiding his gaze. This is important for the company. Yes, it is. He sat across from her, waiting until she looked up. But you're important too. Your well-being, your time with your son. I don't want you taking this on out of some sense of obligation or what? A flicker of discomfort crossed his face. Or because of our personal connection. I value your friendship, Claire, but I don't want it to cloud your professional judgment. The words stung more than they should have. I'm offering because I'm the best person for the boy, she said, her voice cooler than intended. My personal life won't be a factor. Daniel nodded, accepting her assertion with a slight frown. All right, draft the proposal. We'll review it tomorrow. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Claire stared at her notes, the excitement of her idea now tempered by uncertainty. Was she taking on too much? And had she imagined the growing connection between them, reading more into their Saturday together than Daniel had intended? The proposal consumed her next 36 hours. Claire worked late into the night after Noah was asleep, mapping integration points, restructuring teams, creating a detailed implementation schedule that would satisfy both clients. By Wednesday morning, she had a comprehensive plan that would save the company money while delivering both projects on time. The presentation to the senior leadership team went flawlessly. Even Marcus, notorious for finding flaws in others' work, nodded in approval as Claire walked through the technical approach. Daniel remained professional throughout, asking pointed questions, but offering no special treatment. It's an elegant solution, he concluded when she finished. Well done, Claire. If the clients approve, you'll lead the integrated team, effective immediately. The following days blurred together as Claire implemented her plan. Both clients had accepted the proposal, with Franklin even commending the innovative approach. She found herself running between meetings, coordinating developers, solving integration problems on the fly. For the first time since Noah was born, she worked past 7 every night, relying on her neighbor's teenage daughter to watch him until she got home. Noah accepted the change in routine with resilience, but Claire noticed the little signs of strain. More questions about when she'd be home, drawings left on her pillow, phone calls during the day just to hear her voice. She compensated as best she could, making mornings special with pancake breakfasts, reading extra stories at bedtime, promising that the long hours were temporary. The strain began to show at work as well. Claire found herself drinking more coffee, taking fewer breaks, pushing through fatigue to meet deadlines she herself had created. She avoided the company cafeteria, eating at her desk to save time. She stopped going to the gym, sacrificing her already limited personal time to squeeze in more work hours. 2 weeks into the integrated project, Janet appeared at Claire's desk, concern evident in her furrowed brow. Daniel wants to see you in his office. Claire glanced at her watch, surprised to find it was already past 6. Can it wait until morning? I'm in the middle of debugging the Franklin authentication module. He was quite specific about seeing you now. Janet lowered her voice. And if I may say so, you look like you could use a break. When was the last time you went home before 8? Sighing, Claire saved her work and made her way to Daniel's office. He was standing at the window watching the city lights come alive as dusk settled over Chicago. The room was dim, only his desk lamp illuminating the space. "You wanted to see me?" Claire remained in the doorway, suddenly aware of how tired she felt. Daniel turned, studying her with a frown. "Sit down, Claire." She complied, perching on the edge of one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "If this is about the Peterson timeline, I've adjusted it to accommodate their security concerns. We should still hit the target date. This isn't about Peterson or Franklin or any client." He sat across from her, leaning forward with elbows on his knees. "This is about you working yourself into exhaustion." "I'm fine. The integration is at a critical stage." "You're not fine. You've lost weight, you have circles under your eyes, and Janet tells me you haven't left before 8 in 2 weeks. His voice softened. "This isn't sustainable, Claire, and it isn't what I wanted when I approved your proposal." Heat rose in Claire's cheeks, a mix of embarrassment and defensive anger. "I'm delivering what I promised. Both projects are on track." "At what cost?" Daniel's eyes held hers, refusing to let her look away. "How's Noah handling your new schedule?" The question hit a vulnerable spot. "He's adjusting. The neighbor's daughter is watching him. She's very responsible." "And is that what you want? For your son to be raised by the neighbor's daughter while you work 70-hour weeks?" The words struck with precision, piercing through Claire's professional facade to the guilt she'd been suppressing. "That's not fair. I'm doing this for him, for our future, to prove I can handle the responsibility." "You have nothing to prove, Claire. Not to me, not to this company." Daniel's expression was pained. "You were hired because of your talent and experience, not your willingness to sacrifice your personal life." "Easy for you to say." Claire snapped, fatigue making her careless. "You've already made partner, built your company. Some of us are still climbing the ladder. And some of us have learned the hard way that the view from the top isn't worth what you give up to get there." Daniel stood pacing to the window and back. "After Megan died, I buried myself in work, convinced myself I was doing it for Lily's future, for her security. In reality, I was hiding from grief, from the responsibility of being a present parent. Work was easier than facing a child who'd lost her mother." Claire felt her anger ebbing, replaced by understanding. "Daniel, our situations are different." "Are they?" He stopped pacing, facing her directly. "You're using work to prove something to yourself, to the world. That you can do it all, be it all. Perfect employee, perfect mother. No cracks in the facade." His accuracy was unsettling. "What's the alternative? I'm a single parent. I don't have the luxury of what? Of balance, of asking for help." Daniel shook his head. "I'm not suggesting you step away from the integrated project. I'm suggesting we modify the approach, bring in additional resources, adjust the timeline. The clients won't accept delays. Let me worry about the clients." He moved closer, crouching beside her chair so they were at eye level. "Claire, you've helped me see what matters. Let me do the same for you. There's no award at the end of life for most emails answered or most nights worked late. There's just time spent or wasted in the relationships we nurture or neglect along the way." Something broke inside Claire, then a dam of emotion she'd been holding back since David left, since she'd taken on the mantle of sole provider and protector. Tears welled in her eyes, falling before she could stop them. "I just wanted to prove I could do it, that I don't need anyone's help or pity. It's not pity to recognize when someone is exceptional and worth investing in." Daniel reached out hesitantly, covering her hand with his. "And it's not weakness to accept help when it's offered from the right place." Claire looked at their joined hands, then at Daniel's face, open, concerned, without a trace of the judgment she'd feared. "I miss my son," she admitted, the words barely audible. "I miss reading him stories and hearing about his day. I miss being there when he falls asleep." "Well, then go home to him." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. "The work will wait until tomorrow, I promise." For once, Claire didn't argue. She gathered her things, suddenly desperate to see Noah, to hold him, and reassure herself that 2 weeks of long hours hadn't damaged their bond beyond repair. At the door, she paused, turning back to Daniel. "Thank you for caring enough to say something." His smile was tinged with melancholy. "Someone once did the same for me. It's time I paid it forward." That night, Claire arrived home before Noah's bedtime for the first time in weeks. His joy at seeing her early was worth more than any professional accomplishment. They built a fort in the living room, read 3 bedtime stories, and talked about his day until he drifted off to sleep, his small hand clutching hers as though afraid she might disappear. Sitting beside his bed, watching his peaceful face in the glow of the nightlight, Claire made a silent promise. She would find a better way to balance her ambition with her most important role, and she would remember always what Daniel had said. There's no award at the end of life for most emails answered or most nights worked late. There's just time spent or wasted and the relationships we nurture or neglect along the way. The next morning she arrived at work, rested for the first time in weeks, a plan forming in her mind. It was time to reimagine what success could look like, not just for herself, but for everyone at Bennett and Associates who struggled with the same impossible choices. As she walked into the office, Claire noticed something different. Daniel's door was open as usual, but his office was empty. Instead, he sat in the company kitchen laptop, open drinking coffee and chatting with 2 developers from the Peterson project. His tie was loosened, his manner relaxed. When he saw Claire, he waved her over. Morning meeting in a new location, he explained, pulling out a chair for her. I thought we might benefit from a change of scenery. And Janet makes better coffee than the conference room machine. It was a small thing, this informal gathering in the kitchen, rather than the intimidating boardroom. But as Claire joined the conversation, offering insights on the integration challenges, she recognized it for what it was, the beginning of a shift in how they approach work, a humanizing of the corporate environment. And in Daniel's eyes, as he listened to her ideas, she saw something beyond professional respect, something that made her heart beat a little faster, her mind race a little quicker, something that felt like possibility. Later that afternoon, Claire found a Post-it note on her computer monitor. In Daniel's now familiar handwriting were 6 words that would change everything. Have an idea, need your help. Claire stared at this Post-it note, fingers tracing Daniel's angular handwriting. 6 words that hinted at something significant. Have an idea, need your help. She found him in the conference room, surrounded by charts and spreadsheets, a half-eaten sandwich abandoned at his elbow. When she entered, he looked up, a mix of exhaustion and excitement animating his features. You found my note. Daniel gestured to the chair beside him, sliding a folder in her direction. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday about balance, about how we structure work around life instead of the other way around. Claire opened the folder, scanning through employment statistics, retention rates, and productivity analyses. What exactly am I looking at? The hidden cost of burnout. Daniel tapped a particularly stark graph showing employee turnover rates across the industry. Our company performs better than average, but we still lose valuable people. Mostly women, mostly parents with young children. The traditional corporate model fails them, it fails you. The implications hung between them, unspoken but clear. Without intervention, Claire might eventually become another statistic and another talented employee sacrificed to an inflexible system. So what's your idea? She closed the folder, meeting his gaze directly. A comprehensive family support program. Daniel leaned forward, energy radiating from him. Not just the quiet room for emergencies, but structural changes, flexible scheduling, partnership with local child care centers, subsidies for after-school programs, even on-site options for days when schools are closed but were open. Claire's eyebrows rose. This would be expensive. Initially, yes, but look at these numbers. Daniel flipped to another spreadsheet. What we spend on recruiting and training new employees when we lose parents who can't balance work and family. What we lose in institutional knowledge, client relationships, productivity during transitions. The financial case is there if you know where to look. Claire studied the figures, mind racing. Even with these projections, the board would need convincing. This isn't how most consulting firms operate. That's precisely why we should do it. Daniel's voice dropped, intensity replacing volume. When I started Bennett and Associates, I wanted to create something different. Somehow along the way, I fell back into the same patterns I'd seen elsewhere. It took watching you struggling with the same impossible choices my mother faced to remember why I built this company in the first place. The personal admission caught Claire off guard. What exactly do you need from me? Partnership. Daniel held her gaze, the word carrying layers of meaning. I understand the challenges in theory. You live them every time. I need you to help design something that actually works, not just looks good in a proposal. And then I need you to help me sell it to the board, to the employees, eventually to other companies as a model they can follow. Claire felt both flattered and wary. When would we start? We already have. Daniel gestured to his scattered notes. But officially, next week, I'm creating a new position, Director of Workplace Innovation. The role would report directly to me, overseeing the development and implementation of the Family Support Program, with potential to expand into other initiatives later. The implied offer hung in the air between them. Claire felt a familiar tightness in her chest, opportunity colliding with responsibility. This would be in addition to the integrated project. No. Daniel shook his head firmly. You'd transition off that team. This would be your primary focus. But the clients will be fine. Marcus can take over the technical oversight. You've already done the hard part, creating the integration framework. It's time to delegate. The concept was both liberating and terrifying. Claire had built her professional identity on never letting go, on carrying every burden herself. Delegation meant trust in others and in her own value beyond task completion. I need to think about it, she said finally. This is a lot to process. Daniel nodded. Take the weekend. We can talk Monday. He hesitated, a flash of uncertainty crossing his features. And Claire, this offer stands regardless of your decision about the program. You've earned recognition for your work here, independent of everything else. The everything else lingered unspoken, their growing personal connection, the Saturday afternoons that had become a regular occurrence, the easy friendship between their children that mirrored something evolving between the adults. That Sunday, Claire explained the offer to Noah while they baked chocolate chip cookies, flour dusting his nose as he considered the implications with his straightforward 7-year-old wisdom. So you'd help other moms and dads not work so much, chocolate smeared across his chin as he sampled their creation. That sounds important. It would be a thing, but it's also a risk. It's not something many companies do. Noah shrugged, reaching for another cookie. Mr. Daniel is smart. If he thinks it's a good idea, it probably is. By Sunday night, Claire had her answer. Monday morning found her in Daniel's office before the regular workday began. He looked up from his computer, a question in his eyes. I want the position. Claire set a folder on his desk, her own notes, ideas, and preliminary research. But I have conditions. Daniel's eyebrows rose, interest, replacing surprise. I'm listening. The program needs to be comprehensive from day one. Not a pilot, not a phase-in. Full commitment. Claire ticked points off on her fingers. Second, it needs to apply to all employees, not just those with children. Elder care, personal health, continuing education, we support the whole person or we miss the point. Third, I need authority to implement changes without getting bogged down in committees. A slow smile spread across Daniel's face. Those aren't conditions, Claire. Those are improvements to the original concept. One more thing. She met his gaze steadily. This can't be about us, about our friendship, or whatever this is becoming. It has to succeed or fail on its merits, not personal loyalty. Something flickered in Daniel's eyes, acknowledgement of the unspoken evolution of their relationship. Agreed. This is business, Claire. Important business. He extended his hand across the desk. Partners. She took it, the handshake sealing more than a professional agreement. Partners. The next 4 months transformed Claire's professional life. She assembled a small team dedicated to the Family Support Program, researching successful models, interviewing employees about their needs, developing cost projections, and implementation timelines. Daniel gave her full autonomy while providing strategic guidance and clearing organizational obstacles. By March, the program had taken shape, more ambitious than either had initially imagined. They had secured preliminary agreements with 2 local childcare centers, drafted flexible scheduling policies that maintained client service standards, and developed technology solutions for remote work. The financial projections grew increasingly convincing as they quantified the return on investment in retention, productivity, and employee satisfaction. What Claire hadn't anticipated was Marcus Elliott's growing opposition. The CFO had initially dismissed the program as Daniel's latest pet project, but as implementation drew closer, his resistance intensified. In budget meetings, he questioned every expenditure. In planning sessions, he raised endless procedural concerns. Behind closed doors, Claire learned he was lobbying board members, warning about unnecessary expenses and mission drift. He's threatened, Janet confided during a rare coffee break. You've become Daniel's right hand in 4 months. That used to be Marcus's position, even if he'd never admit it. This isn't a power play, Claire protested. It's about creating sustainable work environments. Janet patted her hand. Of course it is, dear, but corporate politics never sleeps even in enlightened companies like ours. The opposition crystallized in early April, 2 weeks before their scheduled presentation to the board. Claire arrived at her office to find an email from Marcus to all department heads requesting impact assessments on how the proposed program would affect their operations due in 3 days. He's trying to bury us in paperwork, Claire fumed, showing the email to Daniel in his office. Nobody can prepare a thoughtful assessment in 3 days. He's setting us up to fail. Daniel's expression darkened. I'll speak with him. No. Claire's response was immediate. That's exactly what he wants, to make this look like your personal crusade, something you're forcing through against operational concerns. Let me handle this. Instead of fighting the request, Claire transformed it. She sent a company-wide email thanking Marcus for raising important implementation questions and announcing open sessions for department heads to discuss the program with her team. Within hours, her calendar filled with meetings, not written assessments, but face-to-face conversations where she could address concerns directly and build support. By the end of the week, she had met with every department head, converting most from skeptics to supporters. When Marcus demanded the written assessments at Monday's executive committee meeting, Claire presented something different, a collaborative implementation plan endorsed by each department with their concerns addressed and integrated. Well played, Daniel murmured as they left the meeting, Marcus visibly seething behind them. But he'll escalate. The board presentation is his last chance to derail this. Claire nodded, already anticipating the next battle. Then we need to be over-prepared, not just with numbers, but with stories. Human impact. The business case matters, but it's not what will convince them. The night before the board presentation, Claire worked late finalizing their materials. Noah was spending the night at Daniel's, a sleepover with Lily that had become a regular arrangement during crunch periods. As Claire gathered her things to head home, Daniel appeared in her doorway. Everything ready for tomorrow? He asked, coffee in hand, despite the late hour. As ready as it can be. Claire saved her files and closed her laptop. We've thought of everything Marcus might throw at us. The numbers are solid. The implementation plan is detailed. If they're not convinced, it won't be because we didn't prepare. Daniel nodded, but there was tension in his posture that Claire had learned to recognize. He wasn't just concerned about the presentation, something else was weighing on him. What is it? She asked, gathering her coat. You look worried. He hesitated. I received a call today from Elizabeth Winters. Claire recognized the name, the board chairwoman, a formidable woman in her 60s who had backed Daniel when he founded the company. What did she want? To warn me. Daniel's voice dropped. Marcus has been unusually active with the board members. She wouldn't say exactly what he's told them, but she advised me to be prepared for resistance. Claire felt a flutter of anxiety. They had anticipated opposition, but if Marcus had been actively lobbying against them tomorrow, would be harder than expected. Any suggestions? Just one. Remember why you started this company. Daniel smiled faintly. Not exactly specific advice, but good advice nonetheless. Claire touched his arm briefly. Get some sleep, Daniel. Tomorrow's a big day. You too. He caught her hand as she moved to leave. Claire, whatever happens tomorrow with the board, I want you to know I'm proud of what we've built. Not just the program, but the partnership. It matters. The sincerity in his voice touched something deep in Claire. Their relationship had evolved into something neither had anticipated, a connection built on shared purpose, mutual respect, and growing personal affection. It matters to me, too, more than I expected. A moment of understanding passed between them, neither ready to name what was developing, but both acknowledging its significance. Then Claire squeezed his hand and left, both needing rest before the battle ahead. The boardroom the next morning felt unusually tense. Board members spoke in hushed tones that fell silent when Claire and Daniel entered. Marcus arrived last, an imposing leather portfolio under his arm, nodding coolly to the chairwoman, while ignoring Claire completely. Elizabeth Winters called the meeting to order, her steel-gray hair and penetrating blue eyes giving her a commanding presence despite her diminutive stature. We have one primary agenda item today, the proposed family support program. Daniel, Claire, the floor is yours. Daniel opened with context, the changing workforce demographics, the competitive landscape for talent, the documented costs of turnover and burnout. Claire followed with the program details, outlining its components with clarity and conviction. Together, they presented the implementation timeline, financial projections, and expected outcomes. As they concluded, silence fell over the room, broken only by paper shuffling as board members reviewed the printed materials. Elizabeth removed her reading glasses, her expression unreadable. This is ambitious, Daniel. More than ambitious, revolutionary for our industry. She tapped her glasses against the table. What prompted such a dramatic departure from standard practice? Daniel glanced at Claire before responding. Evolution, not revolution. We've always valued our people. This program simply recognizes that their value extends beyond the hours they spend at a desk. Noble sentiments, Marcus interjected, opening his portfolio. But the numbers tell a different story. The initial investment would consume nearly 15% of our annual profits. The projected returns are speculative at best, based on models from entirely different industries. Claire had anticipated this attack. The financial projections are conservative, accounting for variables specific to consulting. We've included sensitivity analyses showing positive returns even under pessimistic scenarios. On paper, perhaps. Marcus slid a document across to Elizabeth. But there's another consideration: client perception. Our clients expect dedicated service, immediate responsiveness. How do we maintain that with employees working flexible schedules, taking extended family leaves, prioritizing personal matters over client needs? The question struck at the heart of the industry's culture, the unspoken expectation of total availability, the prestige associated with punishing hours and personal sacrifice. Several board members nodded, murmuring agreement. Claire felt her confidence falter. This was the argument that resonated most with traditional business thinking, that success required suffering, that dedication was measured in missed dinners and absent parenting. Daniel sensed her hesitation and stepped forward. I'd like to address that directly. 3 months ago, we implemented a pilot version of flexible scheduling with the Meridian team. Quietly, no announcements, just a change in how we structured the work. He distributed a new handout. These are the client satisfaction scores before and after. Notice anything? The board members studied the figures, eyebrows rising. Elizabeth spoke first. They improved significantly. Because happy employees do better work. Daniel's voice carried absolute conviction. Because people who aren't exhausted make fewer mistakes. Because consultants who can be present with their families have more empathy for clients' human concerns, not just their business problems. Marcus scoffed. One team, one client, hardly definitive. Then let's talk about retention. Claire regained her footing, turning to a slide they'd held in reserve. In the past 3 months, we've had 0 resignations in the pilot group compared to our historical rate of nearly 4% per quarter. Each retained senior consultant represents approximately $120,000 in avoided recruiting and training costs. A ripple of interest passed through the board. In the consulting business, where human capital was the primary asset, retention translated directly to profitability. Even Marcus seemed momentarily disarmed by the stark figures. There's something else to consider. Daniel's tone shifted, becoming more personal. My mother was a single parent. She cleaned office buildings at night while studying for her law degree during the day. She brought me here along when she had to. One employer fired her for it. Another saw her potential and made accommodations. That second employer gained a loyal employee who eventually became one of their most successful attorneys. The first lost talent they never recognized. He paused, scanning the faces around the table. I founded this company with a promise that we would value people as whole humans, not just producers of billable hours. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that promise. This program is about reclaiming it. The room fell silent, the quality of the silence changing. Claire could feel the shifting energy, consideration, replacing skepticism in many faces. Elizabeth replaced her glasses, studying the proposal with renewed attention. I have questions about implementation, specifically the childcare partnership costs and the scheduling logistics. For the next hour, the board grilled them on details, insurance implications, space requirements, technology needs, staffing considerations. Claire answered with confidence born of thorough research, while Daniel addressed broader strategic concerns. Marcus continued raising objections, but with diminishing support from his colleagues. Finally, Elizabeth called for a vote. The proposal requires significant investment and represents a fundamental shift in our operational approach. I don't make such decisions lightly. She looked directly at Daniel. However, I didn't invest in Bennett and Associates because it followed the herd. I invested because Daniel Morrison had a different vision for what a consulting firm could be. Her gaze shifted to Claire. And because he demonstrated the wisdom to surround himself with people who challenge conventional thinking. I vote yes. One by one, the board members voted. 7 yes, 3 no, Marcus among them, his expression rigid with disapproval. 2 abstentions. The motion carries, Elizabeth announced. The family support program is approved with quarterly review of metrics and outcomes. Afterward, in Daniel's office, the professional restraint they'd maintained throughout the presentation dissolved into spontaneous celebration. Claire found herself caught in Daniel's embrace, his arms lifting her briefly off the ground in an uncharacteristic display of exuberance. We did it. His voice held wonder and relief in equal measure. I can hardly believe it. Claire laughed as he set her down, her hands lingering on his shoulders. Believe it. Now the real work begins. Always the pragmatist. Daniel's smile softened his eyes, holding hers a moment longer than strictly professional. We should celebrate. Dinner tonight? The 4 of us, you, me, the kids. The invitation lingered in the air between them, carrying more significance than a simple meal. Claire felt herself at a crossroads, acknowledging what had been building between them for months, or maintaining the careful boundary between personal and professional. I'd like that, she said finally, choosing possibility over caution. Noah's been asking when we'd see you both again. Lily, too. Daniel's phone buzzed with an incoming call, breaking the moment. I should take this. It's her school. Claire nodded, gathering her notes from the presentation. I'll start drafting the announcement to the staff. We should move quickly before rumors spread. As she turned to leave, Daniel caught her hand. Claire, thank you. Not just for today, but for everything these past months. I couldn't have done this without you. The simple sincerity of his words warmed her more than the board's approval. Partners, remember, that's what we do. We balance each other. The program implementation brought unexpected challenges and opportunities over the next 3 months. The announcement sparked enthusiasm from most employees, but skepticism from others who feared favoritism or resented change. Claire found herself alternating between program management expectation setting and occasional conflict resolution. The childcare partnership proved particularly challenging when their first choice center backed out after contract negotiations stalled. Office renovations to create quiet areas in a small children's zone encountered permit delays. Technology upgrades for remote work capabilities revealed compatibility issues with legacy systems. Through it all, Claire maintained her boundary home by 6 most nights, weekends protected for Noah, regular check-ins with Daniel to ensure neither was carrying too heavy a load. Their personal relationship continued evolving in parallel to their professional collaboration dinner at one home or the other, becoming a weekly tradition, the children's friendship deepening alongside their own growing connection. By July, 6 months after their initial conversation, the program's foundation was firmly established. The staff announcement had evolved into company-wide training sessions, department implementation plans, and a waiting list for the child care subsidy program. Outside interest grew steadily. Industry publications requesting interviews, competitors making inquiries, a local business journal featuring Daniel and Claire in a cover story about workplace innovation. The article brought unexpected attention, including a call from Westbrook Consulting, Claire's former employer. Henderson himself reached out, inviting her to lunch to discuss potential synergies. She declined politely but firmly, a quiet satisfaction warming her at the knowledge that the man who had fired her for bringing her sick child to work now sought her expertise on family-friendly policies. The program's success brought Daniel and Claire into even closer collaboration. They developed a rhythm, anticipating each other's thoughts, complementing each other's strengths, creating solutions neither would have devised alone. Their partnership became the subject of office speculation, whispered conversations that fell silent when they entered rooms, knowing glances from Janet, even a surprisingly direct question from Marcus about the nature of their relationship. They maintained professional boundaries at work, but the line between colleagues and something more grew increasingly blurred outside office hours. Daniel began calling in the evenings after the children were asleep, conversations about work evolving into discussions of books, films, childhood memories, hopes for the future. Claire found herself sharing stories she'd told no one else about her marriage's dissolution, her fears as a single parent, her dreams beyond current horizons. In late June, a heat wave descended on Chicago. The office air conditioning strained to keep pace. Conference rooms became unbearable by afternoon, and tempers frayed as implementation challenges multiplied. A particularly difficult meeting with the IT department left Claire frustrated and overheated, seeking refuge on the building's rooftop garden during her lunch break. She found Daniel already there, jacket discarded sleeves rolled up, staring out at the city skyline shimmering in the heat. Escaping too. She joined him at the railing, the hot wind offering minimal relief from the stifling indoor air. Trying to gain perspective, he gestured toward the sprawling urban landscape. Sometimes I need to remember there's a world beyond budget discussions and scheduling conflicts. The observation matched Claire's own thoughts. The past weeks had tested her conviction, bureaucratic obstacles threatening to overwhelm the program's vision. Having second thoughts about any of it, about the program never. Daniel turned to face her, sunlight highlighting silver at his temples that hadn't been there 6 months before. About how we're implementing it, maybe. We're getting bogged down in details, losing sight of the human element. What do you suggest? A reset, remembering why we started this. He hesitated, weighing his next words carefully. I've been thinking about taking Lily to my lake house for the holiday weekend. 3 days away from spreadsheets and stakeholder management. Just family time, swimming, maybe some fishing. The implied invitation hung in the air between them. Claire waited, heart beating a rhythm just slightly too fast for professional interest. Noah would be welcome too, of course. Daniel looked away, a rare display of uncertainty. If you'd like to join us, no pressure, just it might be good for all of us to remember what we're working toward. 4 days at a lake house, together. The proposition carried implications beyond a simple getaway, crossing a line they had been approaching cautiously for months. I'd need to check Noah's schedule, Claire said, giving herself time to process. And consider logistics. Daniel nodded, acceptance in his eyes. Of course, it's just an idea. That evening, Claire sat on her apartment balcony watching the sunset paint the city skyline in golds and purples. Noah was inside, engrossed in a video call with his father, their monthly check-in that David rarely missed, though he'd visited in person only twice in the past year. The lake house invitations circled in her mind, tempting and terrifying in equal measure. Daniel had become important to her professionally, personally, and in ways she wasn't quite ready to name. Noah adored him, and Lily thriving in their expanded circle of connection. The weekend away offered an opportunity to explore possibilities beyond careful boundaries. But risk accompanied opportunity. Office rumors would intensify if they spent a holiday weekend together. Professional complications could arise if a personal relationship developed and subsequently faltered. Noah could be hurt if attachments formed and broke. Her phone rang, cutting through her circular thoughts. Daniel's name appeared on the screen as though her contemplation had summoned him. I'm calling to rescind the invitation, he said without preamble, his voice carrying a note she hadn't heard before, vulnerability mixed with determination. Not because I don't want you and Noah to come, but because I realized I wasn't being entirely honest about my reasons for asking. Claire's breath caught. What do you mean? I didn't invite you as a colleague needing perspective on our work. I invited you as a man who wants to spend time with a woman he's come to care about deeply. The words tumbled out, direct and unvarnished. And that's not fair to you, mixing personal feelings with professional partnership, putting you in a position where declining might feel awkward. The honesty disarmed her practiced caution. Daniel, you don't need to respond, he continued quickly. I just wanted to clear the air. We have an important partnership, work that matters. I won't jeopardize that with complications neither of us needs. Silence stretched between them, filled with words unspoken on both sides. Claire found herself standing, pacing the small balcony as decision crystallized into certainty. What if I want complications? The question emerged softer than intended, nearly lost in the ambient city noise. What if I've been thinking about the same possibilities you have? Now it was Daniel's turn for silence, the space between heartbeats extending into seconds. Claire, I need to be sure we're talking about the same thing. Because for me, this isn't casual. I don't have room in my life for temporary or uncertain. Neither do I. She leaned against the railing, watching lights flicker on across the darkening city. I have Noah to consider. You have Lily. We both have the program, the company responsibilities to others. But despite all those complications, or maybe because of them, I find myself wanting to explore what might be possible. Between us, his exhale carried months of careful restraint. Then come to the lake. Bring Noah. Let's have 4 days away from everything else, just the four of us figuring out what this might become. When Claire ended the call, she found Noah watching her from the doorway, his video chat with David evidently concluded. His expression was thoughtful, more perceptive than a 7-year-old should be. Was that Mr. Daniel? No judgment in the question, just curiosity. You look happy. Claire knelt to his level, needing to see his eyes for this conversation. It was. He's invited us to his lake house for the holiday weekend. You, me, him, and Lily. Would you like that? Noah considered, head tilting in the gesture he'd had since infancy when processing something important. Like a family trip. The question cut straight to implications Claire had been circling. Not exactly. More like friends spending time together. But she paused, choosing honesty over protection. Mr. Daniel and I are becoming close friends. Maybe someday something more. How would you feel about that? Noah's brow furrowed in thought. Do you like him the way Dad liked Stacy before they got married? Claire nodded, surprised by his directness. I might. We're still figuring that out. Does that mean he would live with us or we would live with them? No, honey, we're nowhere near those kinds of decisions. Right now, we're just spending time together, seeing if we all fit well in each other's lives. Noah absorbed this face serious. I like Mr. Daniel. He doesn't talk to me like I'm a baby. And Lily knows cool stuff about rocks and bugs. He paused, a shadow crossing his features. But what if you decide you don't like each other anymore? Would we still see them? The question revealed his deeper fear of loss of attachments, broken, of people disappearing from his life, like his father had. Claire pulled him into a gentle embrace, heart aching for the insecurity he carried. That's a very wise question, she murmured into his hair. The truth is, I don't know exactly what would happen. But I promise you this, I won't make decisions that affect you without talking to you first. And whatever happens between me and Mr. Daniel, we would both make sure you and Lily weren't hurt by it. Noah leaned back, studying her face with solemn eyes. Okay, I want to go to the lake. Lily said they have frogs there. Children's resilience never ceased to amaze Claire, their ability to absorb complex emotional situations and reduce them to essentials. Frogs at the lake. New friends, adults who listened. These formed the foundation of security, not formal relationships or official arrangements. The 4th of July weekend arrived with perfect summer weather, clear skies, moderate temperatures, a gentle breeze off the lake. Daniel's property was more modest than Claire had imagined, a cedar-sided cabin with a wraparound porch nestled among pine trees on a small peninsula. The lake was really a large pond, private enough for swimming, but small enough to kayak across in 15 minutes. The simplicity suited them. The children disappeared immediately to explore, returning muddy and triumphant, with reports of frogs captured and released, a turtle sighting, and a perfect climbing tree near the water's edge. Daniel grilled hamburgers on the deck while Claire prepared salad in the small but functional kitchen, their movements around each other already comfortable. Domestic in a way that should have felt premature but somehow didn't. After dinner, they built a campfire near the shore, roasting marshmallows as twilight settled over the water. Lily taught Noah how to find the perfect stick and achieve the golden brown exterior she insisted was superior to the charred approach most people favored. Daniel produced a guitar from the cabin, surprising Claire with a repertoire of folk songs and campfire classics. As darkness fell, fireflies emerged, dotting the shoreline with intermittent light. Noah and Lily chased them, mason jars in hand, their laughter carrying across the still water. Claire watched from her Adirondack chair, contentment washing over her like the gentle waves lapping at the dock. They're good together, Daniel observed, setting his guitar aside to join her. Lily was so shy before meeting Noah. Now look at her. The girl was indeed transformed from the solemn child Claire had first met, running, laughing, speaking animatedly to Noah as they compared firefly catches. Children adapt faster than we do, They haven't learned all our careful fears yet. Daniel's hand found hers in the gathering darkness, fingers intertwining naturally. And what careful fears might you be harboring, Claire Bennett? The directness of the question matched the mood this night outside normal time away from professional constraints and urban complications. That this feels too right, that nothing this good lasts without a price. Maybe the price has already been paid. Daniel's thumb traced circles on her palm. The years of struggle of doing it all alone. The doubts, the exhaustion, the moments of wondering if it would ever get easier. His voice dropped lower, meant only for her. Maybe this is what waits on the other side of endurance, not a price to pay, but a reward for the journey. The perspective shift resonated deeply, challenging Claire's ingrained expectation of struggle. What if happiness wasn't a temporary state before the next challenge, but a destination she'd earned through years of persistence? I want to believe that, she whispered, watching the children's silhouettes against the silver-touched water. For Noah's sake. For mine. Then let's start here. Daniel's voice held certainty without pressure. 4 days. No expectations beyond honest conversation and time together. See where it leads. The weekend unfolded in a rhythm that felt both novel and familiar. Swimming in the morning light, hiking forest trails, board games during an afternoon thunderstorm, stories on the porch as twilight gathered. Daniel and Claire found moments alone, early morning coffee on the dock, evening conversations after the children slept to explore their connection without audience or interruption. On their final evening with the children asleep in the cabin's loft, they sat on the dock watching heat lightning play across distant clouds. The air was heavy with approaching rain, the scent of pine and water enveloping them in nature's privacy. I don't want to go back tomorrow. Claire leaned against Daniel's shoulder, his arm around her, a comfort she'd grown accustomed to with surprising speed. To schedules and expectations and office politics. We could extend our stay. His suggestion held playful impossibility. Become lake hermits, fish for our dinner, teach the children woodland survival skills. Tempting. Claire laughed softly. But reality awaits. The program launched next week. Noah's day camp, Lily's therapy appointment. Daniel sighed, acknowledging the responsibilities that define their lives. At least we'll face it together now. That's the difference, not what we're returning to, but how we're facing it. Claire tilted her head up, meeting his gaze in the dim light. Are we really doing this? Taking this chance? Instead of answering with words, Daniel lowered his lips to hers, a first kiss both tentative and certain, the culmination of months of growing connection. Claire responded with the release of long-held hesitation, allowing herself to lean fully into possibility. When they separated, breath mingling in the humid night air, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. I was that lonely kid once trying to be invisible in a corner. You saw me, not just the CEO, not just Lily's father, but me. How could I not fall in love with the woman who finally saw me? The word love hung between them. Neither rushed nor restrained, simply true. Claire felt answering emotion rise within her, not fear but recognition. I saw you because you saw me first. Not just an employee, not just Noah's mother, but me. The woman I almost forgot existed beneath all those roles. Their second kiss carried promise of patience, of careful integration of lives, braiding together not in haste, but with deliberate attention to all 4 hearts involved. Above them, stars pierced the cloud cover, witnesses to possibility unfolding on a wooden dock at the edge of a small lake, far from the city's demands. The return to Chicago brought new challenges and opportunities. Office speculation intensified when Claire and Daniel arrived together Monday morning, though they maintained professional boundaries at work. Janet offered quiet congratulations while Marcus watched with narrowed eyes, clearly calculating implications for company dynamics. As August arrived, bringing the program's official launch across the entire company, its impact began manifesting in unexpected ways. An employee with an ailing parent requested flexible scheduling for caregiving responsibilities. A team member with chronic illness utilized the quiet room during flare-ups, maintaining productivity instead of taking sick days. A talented developer who had been considering resignation found a compromise through partial remote work, saving the company a valuable asset. Success stories accumulated, providing ammunition against persistent skeptics. Even Marcus grudgingly acknowledged positive trends in the quarterly financial review, though he attributed them to market conditions rather than workplace innovation. By September, industry recognition began arriving. A business journal named Bennett and Associates, one of Chicago's best workplaces for families. Recruitment applications increased 30%, many specifically citing the family support program as their reason for interest. Claire found herself increasingly invited to speak at industry events, creating a new challenge of balancing advocacy with her internal responsibilities. One evening in late September, as they reviewed her upcoming schedule in Daniel's home office, Noah and Lily watching a movie downstairs, Daniel noticed the strain. "You've got 3 speaking engagements in October, plus consultations with 4 different companies." He frowned at the calendar. "Plus your regular responsibilities managing the program internally. That's not sustainable." Claire rubbed her temples, acknowledging his concern. "It's important exposure. For the program, for the company. For you as well." Daniel set the calendar aside. "But you're at risk of the same burnout we designed the program to prevent." The irony would be almost comical if it weren't so concerning. "What do you suggest? Declining opportunities feels counterproductive when we're trying to spread this model." Daniel considered for a moment. "What if we expanded the team, brought in someone to manage the internal program, while you focus on external advocacy, or vice versa, if you prefer?" The suggestion made practical sense, but Claire felt an instinctive resistance. The program was her creation, her responsibility. Delegating felt like relinquishing control. Before she could respond, they heard Noah calling from downstairs, excitement in his voice. They found the children in the living room, Lily holding her tablet with an email displayed. "Dad, Ms. Claire, look," Lily thrust the tablet forward. "My science teacher entered my ecosystem project in the citywide competition, and I got selected as a finalist. They're announcing winners next Friday at the Museum of Science and Industry." Pride blossomed across Daniel's face as he read the email. "Lily, that's incredible. The project you and Noah worked on about pond ecosystems." Lily nodded, practically bouncing with excitement. "Noah helped me collect samples and identify all the invertebrates. The judges said my analysis of the food web was sophisticated and scientifically rigorous." "That's my girl." Daniel pulled her into a hug, his voice thick with emotion. "Your mom would be so proud of you." Claire watched the embrace, Noah sidling up beside her with his own proud grin. "We found 17 different species of bugs and worms," he informed her solemnly. "It was gross, but awesome." The domestic scene crystallized something for Claire, the integration of their lives unfolding naturally through shared moments of celebration, the children's friendship deepening their parents' connection. 4 separate paths gradually converging into a shared journey. Later that night, after the children were asleep and they'd settled on Daniel's porch with glasses of wine, Claire returned to their earlier conversation. "You're right about expanding the team. I can't do it all alone. That's exactly what the program is meant to prevent, isn't it? The expectation that we can somehow do everything perfectly all the time." Daniel nodded, waiting for her to continue. "But there's something else we should discuss." Claire set her wine glass down, gathering courage for the conversation she'd been contemplating for weeks. "The children are spending more time together. We're practically living between 2 households already. At some point, we should talk about more permanent arrangements." Daniel's expression shifted to careful neutrality. "What kind of arrangements did you have in mind?" "I don't know exactly." Claire chose honesty over preparation. "But I do know that Noah asked me last week if we were going to be a real family someday, and I didn't have an answer for him." Daniel reached for her hand, his touch grounding. "What answer would you like to give him?" "The truthful one." Claire met his gaze directly. "That I love you, that I believe we could build something beautiful together. But that major life decisions affect all 4 of us and deserve careful consideration rather than rushed promises." Daniel's breath caught at her declaration. "I love you too," he said quietly, the simple statement carrying the weight of certainty. "And I agree about consideration, about including the children in the conversation. But Claire, I want you to know that in my mind, there's no question about the destination, only the timeline." The clarity of his intention warmed her more than any formal proposal could have. This was what she needed, not rushed romance or grand gestures, but steady certainty, mutual understanding, shared vision for a future they would build deliberately together. "Then let's start the conversation," she suggested. "Not with the children yet, but between ourselves. What might our future look like, practically, logistically, emotionally? Daniel nodded, squeezing her hand. I'd like that, but first, he reached into his pocket, extracting a small velvet box. I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment. This isn't a proposal, not yet, but a promise that when we're ready, when all four of us are ready, I'll ask properly. He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond set in platinum, elegant without ostentation. It was my grandmother's. My mother kept it for me, said I'd know when I found the person it belonged to. His voice softened. I've known for months, Claire. Claire stared at the ring, emotions cascading through her calm, certainty the barest edge of familiar fear now recognized and set aside. This was no impulsive gesture, but the culmination of a journey they'd been walking together through parallel struggles, shared purpose, and growing love. Keep it safe, she whispered, closing the box with gentle fingers. For when the time is right, when we've laid the foundation for all four of us. Daniel slipped the box back into his pocket, understanding in his eyes. No rush. We have time to build this right. The first autumn leaves drifted down from the maple tree, overhanging the porch, nature's gentle reminder of seasons changing. Claire leaned against Daniel's shoulder, contentment settling deep in her bones. 5 years ago, she'd stood in Henderson's office, hearing the words that ended her employment and seemed to confirm her deepest fear that being a devoted mother made her less valuable professionally. Now she sat beside a man who had recognized that her commitment to motherhood enhanced rather than diminished her worth, who had helped her create systemic change that would benefit countless other parents facing impossible choices. The journey from that moment of despair to this evening of quiet certainty hadn't been direct or easy. But looking back, Claire could trace the constellation of choices and chances that had led her here, to professional fulfillment, to personal happiness, to the threshold of a family expanded through love rather than necessity. All it had taken was one person willing to remember his own vulnerable moments, willing to say, I understand, let me help. And from that simple recognition, everything had changed, not just for Claire and Noah, but for Daniel and Lily, for Bennett and associates, and potentially for workplace culture beyond their immediate influence. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, program, expansion decisions, speaking engagements, children's science projects. But tonight, under the canopy of stars visible, even through Chicago's light pollution, Claire allowed herself to fully inhabit this moment of possibility realized. Some people spend lifetimes searching for such moments. Claire had found hers in the aftermath of what had seemed like failure, a reminder that endings often contain the seeds of more beautiful beginnings for those with courage to plant them.